has the blockade started, sir?
Yeah, started 10 o'clock.
What's the end game? Is it to force Iran back to the negotiating table? Is it to open up the strait so that gas prices ultimately come down?
Maybe everything. I mean, both of those things, certainly, and more. We can't let a country blackmail or extort.
The circle formed faster than a bridge team could call it out. Off the carrier's port bow, 3 Iranian patrol boats knifed across the gray water. Another pack appeared to starboard. Then more contacts lifted through the morning haze until the tactical display showed the shape every naval commander dreads in a confined sea lane. 50 fast boats bending inward around a U.S. aircraft carrier while 9 minutes remained to get F-35s off the deck and turn a trap into a warning. This was the Strait of Hormuz, where distance collapses and decisions arrive under pressure. The waterway looks broad on a map, yet the traffic lanes are narrow, crowded, and structured. Tankers move through 2-mile corridors separated by a buffer zone, and warships passing that bottleneck lose the luxury of maneuver. A carrier can dominate open ocean. In Hormuz, even a supercarrier has to respect geometry. It cannot dodge like a destroyer. It has to hold course, trust its screen, and survive long enough for the next layer of force to come alive. The target inside that tightening ring was more than a ship. A U.S. carrier in these waters says the sea lanes stay open. That is exactly why Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy studies this environment so closely. Tehran does not need to sink a carrier to score a strategic win. It only needs to make safe passage look fragile. It only needs to prove that a few narrow miles near its coast can force the most powerful navy on Earth into a dangerous public calculation. The Iranian boats were built for that calculation. Some were little more than stripped-down speed machines with mounted guns and rocket rails. Others were heavier patrol craft able to carry missiles, explosives, or boarding teams. Many could sprint past 30 knots. The real strength, though, was never one hull. It was the swarm. Numbers, noise, confusion, a contact picture so crowded that the defender wastes precious seconds deciding which boat matters most. That is how small boats become a real military problem. They do not need to win a clean fight. They only need to compress time. A boat closing at 30 knots can cover roughly 1,000 yards in a minute. A cluster doing that from several bearings can force a warship to rotate guns, reposition escorts, warn civilian traffic, and still hold fire until hostile intent is undeniable. The carrier strike group knew this before the first Iranian wake crossed its scope. The escorts were already in a protective pattern, destroyers outside the main body, electronic surveillance working the coastline, helicopters prepared for surface identification. Up on the flight deck, 2 F-35Cs sat on alert status, armed and fueled, their crews close by because a carrier transit near Iran is never treated like routine sailing. Yet alert aircraft are not magic. They still need deck clearance, final checks, and a command decision. 9 minutes separated detection from air response. The first 2 minutes belonged to confusion. Fishing dhows and merchant traffic cluttered the horizon. Heat shimmer made low contacts flicker. Some Iranian boats paralleled the formation as if shadowing. Others crossed ahead, then peeled away. One moved behind a tanker's wake and vanished from a clean visual line. Another group stayed wider, almost lazy, like spectators gathering for a show. That was the trap inside the trap. Make ordinary motion look harmless until the pattern changes all at once. It changed in minute 3. The outer groups accelerated together. 3 clusters hardened into a front arc ahead of the carrier's course. Another string moved toward the aft quarters where wake turbulence and escort traffic could hide a fast approach. A few boats worked the flanks, not yet charging, just probing, daring the Americans to reveal which sectors worried them most. On the bridge, on the flag plot, and deep inside combat, the same truth landed at once. This was not random harassment. It was coordinated pressure designed to box in the biggest ship in the formation and force the United States to either back down, break formation, or fire first. Yeah, and that made the stakes larger than the immediate danger. Roughly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil moves through Hormuz. Insurance rates, shipping schedules, allied confidence, energy markets, and military credibility all hinge on whether ships can pass here without being manhandled. When Iranian patrol boats surround a U.S. carrier in this corridor, the incident is never local. It reaches oil traders in London, commanders in Bahrain, and every regional militia leader waiting to see whether Washington still controls escalation or merely reacts to it. The U.S. commander aboard the carrier did not need a speech. He needed sequence, maintain course, protect civilian traffic, tighten the screen, establish clear warnings, prepare the F-35 launch, hold lethal fire until the line is crossed. That final instruction was the heaviest one of all. Everyone on those ships understood the dilemma. If the Americans shot too early, Tehran would claim aggression against patrol craft in home waters. If they waited too long, a swarm could get close enough to throw rockets, ram, lay mines, or force a chaotic defensive burst beside commercial shipping. Minot 4 started the defender's move. The lead destroyer slid outward carefully because even a defensive shift inside a traffic lane can create its own crisis. A second escort drifted astern of the carrier to seal the rear sector. Small caliber mounts came alive, tracking through stabilized sights. Combat teams sorted contacts by speed, angle, and consistency of approach. Bridge-to-bridge radios filled with warnings in measured tones. Horn blasts sounded across the water. The message was unmistakable. You are too close. Your maneuvers are unsafe. Alter course now. The Iranian response was textbook pressure. Two boats cut harder toward the destroyer screen, almost daring it to block. Several others crossed each other's wakes to create a mess of spray and closing lines. One pair stayed just outside the clearest danger band, weapons visible but not raised enough to settle the legal question. Another boat came from behind a merchant vessel, turning civilian traffic into background clutter. It was professional intimidation built to overload discipline rather than defeat firepower. Minot 5 belonged to the flight deck. The carrier began earning its way out of the box by preparing air power. Deck crews in colored jerseys moved with clipped speed. Chains came off. Power carts disconnected. Final checks raced down the jets like current. The first F-35C pilot climbed in, knowing this launch was not just about combat. It was about vertical pressure on a horizontal problem. A stealth fighter does not chase speedboats with missiles as its first job in a scene like this. Its value begins with presence, sensor fusion, and the message that the swarm has already lost control of the sky. There was also a hard tactical reason to get them airborne. The carrier's radar picture close to the surface was good, but sea clutter, merchant traffic, island shadows, and tight approach angles can complicate the low-level picture in a crowded strait. An F-35 overhead widens the view, classifies faster, and gives the strike group a cleaner understanding of what is mere harassment and what is being cued from farther inland. If coastal batteries, drones, or missile boats were part of a layered Iranian play, the jets would see the pattern sooner than the ships pinned in the corridor. Minute 6 was the breaking point. 3 Iranian boats surged from the starboard quarter and pointed directly at the carrier's wake, the one place where visual tracking from parts of the deck is hardest and reaction time feels brutally short. Their speeds jumped past 30 knots. At the same time, boats ahead of the formation tightened laterally, narrowing the available path. This was nightmare geometry. Hold course and the rear boats close. turn, and the bow traffic becomes a collision field, accelerate, and the formation risks outrunning its own escort alignment. Slow down, and the ring tightens. The carrier did the only sensible thing. It stayed steady while the escorts absorbed the danger. The aft destroyer knifed across just enough to put steel, sensors, and guns between the rear attackers and the carrier's stern. A helicopter already spinning on deck lifted and dipped low over the water to challenge the closest boats with altitude, noise, and direct observation. Its crew relayed what they could see. Crews exposed on mounts, no clear missile launch yet, aggressive posture, no sign of backing off. That report kept the Americans in the hardest zone of all. Threat obvious. Just enough ambiguity left to make every next move historic. Minute 7 brought the first open line in the sand. Warning shots cracked from an escort after repeated radio calls went unanswered. They were measured, not panicked, fired across the water ahead of the nearest boats. 2 Iranian craft broke outward instantly. 1 did not. It kept driving in. Bow hammering through chop, spray blowing wide, crew visible behind the mount. Another boat cut left, trying to exploit the distraction. A third slid behind wake turbulence as if searching for a hidden lane. On the flight deck, launch crews were now racing the clock the title had promised. Final deck checks cleared, catapult sequence ready, wind over deck adjusted as much as the confined transit allowed. The first F-35C rolled into position with wings locked and surfaces alive. The pilot saw more than water ahead. He saw the political edge of the Gulf. 1 bad minute down there, and a harassment incident became a war opening. Minute 8 belonged to weapons logic. The Americans had overwhelming force, but not every weapon fit the problem. Heavy anti-ship missiles were irrelevant. 5-inch guns were too blunt in crowded shipping unless the situation exploded into open battle. Close-in systems existed to save the ship at the last moment, not manage an escalatory gray zone full of civilian hulls. The most useful tools were the least glamorous: disciplined radios, .50 caliber warnings, 25mm precision, helicopters with eyes above the clutter, destroyers willing to shield the carrier, and aircraft able to command the wider picture the second they left the deck. Then the first jet launched. The catapult stroke was violent, fast, and almost surgical. 1 second, the F-35C was locked to steel and timing. The next, it was airborne over the Gulf, climbing through heat shimmer and turning immediately toward the contact geometry around the strike group. Its arrival changed the battle before it fired a shot. Iranian boat crews that had been focused on the water now had to think vertically. A second jet followed soon after, giving the formation overlapping sensors and visible proof of escalation control. The United States was no longer just holding the line at sea, it was reclaiming the whole battle space around it. The lead Iranian boats, still inside the danger band, had to decide whether to become martyrs, signals, or survivors. 1 kept charging until an escort's second burst landed close enough to shower the hull and wreck its nerve. It veered hard. Another tried to swing wide around the destroyer screen and found a helicopter pressing so low and so aggressively that the maneuver collapsed before it matured. Boats on the forward arc lost spacing. The flanking pairs that had looked so dangerous minutes earlier began opening distance from each other. A swarm only works when it behaves like one mind. The instant each boat starts protecting itself, the formation loses its sharp edge. That unraveling happened in under a minute. A pair peeled away toward the Iranian coast. Several slowed behind merchant traffic. 2 more turned broadside long enough to show they were no longer committed to the close approach. The F-35s remained overhead, not hunting speedboats like movie gunships, but feeding the strike group a wider and clearer understanding of the scene, watching for any higher-end threat that might have been waiting behind the swarm. None appeared. No missiles came off the coast. No drone raid followed. The box had failed. The immediate crisis ended not with a cinematic explosion, but with professional control. No U.S. ship was hit. No Iranian boat reached collision range of the carrier. Civilian traffic kept moving. The escorts stayed between the carrier and the swarm until the ring dissolved into scattered contacts and distant wakes. That mattered because the best outcome in Hormuz is often the least dramatic one. Survive the encounter, deny the spectacle, keep the sea lane open. Even so, the aftermath carried a harder message than the engagement itself. Iran had shown it could mass boats quickly, manipulate geography, and create a serious compression of American decision time in one of the world's most sensitive waterways. The United States had shown something just as important in return. A carrier is not only a launch platform, it is a system of systems. Escorts, helicopters, alert fighters, disciplined gunnery, legal restraint, and command sequencing all work together under pressure. That combination is why a swarm can frighten a formation without breaking it. The strategic lesson was sharper than either side would admit in public. Hormuz rewards the side that can shape time. Iran tries to do it by shrinking reaction windows with numbers and proximity. The United States does it by preserving control when everyone expects confusion. 9 minutes in a narrow strait was enough to prove both truths at once. 50 patrol boats could surround a carrier. They still could not own the sky above it, the discipline around it, or the decision inside it. And that is why the encounter mattered. The boats came close enough to make the Gulf hold its breath. The jets rose fast enough to remind everyone what happens when intimidation meets a force that knows exactly how long 9 minutes can be.